The colony ship Perseverance moved through the darkness of space like a massive metal whale swimming through an endless ocean. Inside its hull, 3,000 humans slept in cryogenic pods, dreaming of their new home on a planet circling Alpha Centauri. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the command chair, watching the stars through the main viewport. She had been awake for 6 months now, overseeing the final approach to their destination. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she didn't care. After 2 years of travel, they were finally close. The ship's computer made a soft beeping sound. Sarah looked at the display screen and felt her heart skip a beat. 3 unknown vessels had appeared on their sensors. They were large, much larger than the Perseverance, and they were moving to intercept the human ship. "Wake up the senior staff," Sarah said to the computer. "We have company." Within minutes, her second-in-command, Marcus Webb, arrived on the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. He was a former military officer from Earth, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked at the sensor display and cursed quietly. "They're positioning themselves to surround us," Marcus said. "Classic military formation." Sarah nodded. This was not a friendly greeting. The 3 alien ships moved with practiced precision, cutting off any escape route the Perseverance might take. Sarah had known that humanity might encounter other intelligent life among the stars, but she had hoped their first meeting would be peaceful. A communication signal came through. Sarah took a deep breath and accepted it. The face that appeared on the screen was not human. It had gray-scaled skin, 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the ship's computer translated the words into English. "Primitive vessel, you have entered territory claimed by the Zarian Empire," the alien said. Its voice was cold and mechanical through the translation. "Your species is unknown to the Galactic Council. You will surrender your ship immediately and submit to processing. Resistance will result in your destruction." Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. She had not brought 3,000 people across the stars just to surrender to the first bully they met. She stood up from her chair and faced the screen directly. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Perseverance," she said clearly. "We are peaceful colonists traveling to an unclaimed star system. We have no quarrel with you or your empire. We request safe passage." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as if it could not believe what it was hearing. Then it made a sound that the computer translated as laughter. "You request?" the alien said mockingly. "You have no authority to request anything. Your species just crawled out of your home system. You know nothing of galactic law or power. The Galactic Council has maintained order for 50,000 years. New species do not get to make demands. You will surrender or be destroyed. You have one of your time units to comply." The communication ended abruptly. Sarah looked at Marcus, who was already working at a console. "How long is one of their time units?" she asked. "The computer estimates about 20 minutes, Marcus replied. He looked up at her. "Sarah, we can't fight 3 warships with a colony vessel. We have some defensive weapons, but nothing designed for real combat." Sarah knew he was right. The Perseverance had been built to carry people and supplies, not to fight wars. It had some railguns and missile launchers, but they were meant for destroying asteroids and space debris, not military vessels. But Sarah also knew something that the arrogant alien did not know. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire history. They had learned to win battles against superior enemies through cleverness, determination, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. She had not left Earth to become a slave on her first day in a new star system. "Wake up everyone with military experience," Sarah ordered. "Get them to their stations. Marcus, I need you to look at our cargo manifest. Find everything we can use as a weapon." "Sarah, what are you planning?" Marcus asked. "We're going to teach these Zarians that humans don't surrender," she said. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of activity. The Perseverance was not a warship, but it was carrying equipment to build a colony on a new world. That meant it had mining explosives, industrial lasers, construction drones, and fuel reserves. Sarah gathered her small team of people with military backgrounds. Most were veterans who had signed up for the colony mission to start a new life. Now they would need to remember their old skills. The Zarian ships began moving closer when the time limit expired. Sarah watched them on the sensors, noting their positions and movements. They were confident, maybe too confident. They expected the human ship to surrender or run away. "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. The same scaled face appeared on the screen again, looking annoyed. "Your time has expired. Surrender now or we will open fire," the alien commander said. I have a counteroffer, Sarah replied calmly. You leave us alone and we won't have to embarrass you in front of your Galactic Council. The alien's four eyes widened. Then it made that laughing sound again, louder this time. Your species has courage, I will grant you that, it said. But courage without power is just foolishness. You have sealed your fate. The communication ended. On the sensor display, Sarah watched the 3 Zetharian warships power up their weapons. Red targeting beams reached out toward the Perseverance. Now, Sarah said quietly. The Perseverance had been releasing construction drones for the past 15 minutes. Tiny machines meant for building structures on the new colony world. The Zetharians had ignored them as harmless. That was their first mistake. Each drone now carried a mining explosive attached to its hull. The drones activated their thrusters and raced toward the 3 warships at maximum speed. The Zetharians noticed too late. Their point defense weapons destroyed many of the drones, but dozens got through. Explosions bloomed across the hulls of all 3 warships. The blasts were not strong enough to destroy the ships, but they damaged sensors and weapon systems. The Zetharians had not expected any resistance, and certainly not this kind of creative attack. While the aliens were confused, Sarah gave her next order. The Perseverance fired its mining lasers. These were industrial tools meant to cut through rock and ice, but they worked just as well on metal hulls. The lasers focused on one ship, cutting into its engine section. The Zetharian vessel began spinning out of control as its thrusters failed. They're returning fire, Marcus shouted. Energy beams lanced out from the 2 remaining Zetharian warships. The Perseverance's shields absorbed some of the damage, but alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Sarah felt the deck shake beneath her feet. Release the fuel pods, she ordered. The colony ship had been carrying extra fuel tanks as external cargo, attached to the outside of the hull. These now separated from the Perseverance and drifted toward the Zetharian ships. The aliens saw them coming and fired their weapons, trying to destroy the tanks before they got close. That was their second mistake. The fuel tanks exploded in massive fireballs that washed over the Zetharian vessels. The explosions did not destroy the warships, but they blinded their sensors and threw them off course. Sarah used that moment to make her move. The Perseverance's main engines roared to life, pushing the colony ship forward at maximum acceleration. Instead of running away, Sarah drove her ship straight toward the damaged Zetharian vessel that was still spinning out of control.
Brace for impact!
She shouted. The Perseverance did not actually hit the alien ship. At the last moment, Sarah changed course, passing within a few hundred meters of the Zetharian vessel. As they passed, the colony ship fired every weapon it had left directly into the damaged warship's hull. Railgun rounds punched through weakened armor. Missiles slammed into exposed systems. The mining lasers cut deeper into the engine section. The Zetharian ship exploded. Debris scattered in all directions, forcing the other 2 alien vessels to take evasive action. Sarah did not give them time to recover. She aimed the Perseverance at empty space and accelerated hard, pushing the colony ship's engines beyond their safe limits. The ship groaned and shook, but it kept moving. Behind them, the 2 remaining Zetharian warships gave chase. But Sarah had bought enough time. A swirling portal of light appeared in front of the Perseverance. It was a jump point, a tear in space that would let them cross vast distances instantly. Sarah had been calculating its position for the last 10 minutes, using the ship's navigation computer to find a way out. "Hold on," she shouted. The Perseverance plunged into the jump point and vanished. The Zetharian ship stopped at the edge of the portal, unwilling to follow into unknown space. Inside the jump tunnel, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. They had survived. Barely. The ship was damaged, several people were injured, and they had lost precious fuel and supplies. But they were alive, and they had shown the Zetharians that humans were not easy prey. Marcus came over to her chair, looking exhausted but proud. "That was either brilliant or insane," he said. "Maybe both." "We didn't have much choice," Sarah replied. "If we had surrendered, who knows what would have happened to us? At least now they know that humans fight back." She looked at the sensor displays, watching the jump tunnel flow past the ship. They would emerge somewhere far from the Zetharians, hopefully in a safe location where they could make repairs and contact Earth. But Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They had destroyed a warship belonging to the Zetharian Empire. They had defied what the aliens called the Galactic Council. The consequences of that action would follow them. Sarah wondered what kind of galaxy humanity had just entered. Were all the aliens like the arrogant Zarians? Was there room in this old established civilization for a young species that refused to bow down? She thought about the 3,000 sleeping colonists in the cryogenic bay. They had trusted her to lead them to a new world, a fresh start. Instead, she had started a conflict that might change humanity's destiny forever. The Perseverance emerged from the jump tunnel into normal space. Alarms immediately started blaring again. Sarah looked at the sensors and felt her blood run cold. They were not alone. A massive space station hung in the darkness ahead of them, easily 100 times larger than their colony ship. Dozens of vessels of different shapes and sizes surrounded it. "That's not a Zarian station," Marcus said, studying the readings. "Those ships are from at least 20 different species." "Sarah, I think we just found the Galactic Council." Sarah stared at the massive station, knowing that their real test was about to begin. They had fought off the Zarians, but now they would face the powers that ruled the galaxy. She thought about what the Zarian commander had said. 50,000 years of order. New species were expected to submit and obey, but humans had never been good at following rules they did not agree with. Sarah had just proven that in the most violent way possible. A communication signal came from the station. Sarah straightened in her chair and prepared to face whatever came next. Humanity's journey to the stars had begun with fire and defiance. She wondered if that would be enough to survive in a galaxy that did not want them. 6 months had passed since the Perseverance arrived at the Galactic Council station. Those months had been filled with difficult negotiations, tense meetings, and countless hours of debate. The Council had been shocked by humanity's violent introduction to galactic society. Some species wanted to destroy Earth before humans could become a threat. Others argued for containment or strict monitoring. In the end, humanity was given a conditional chance. They could establish colonies, but only in systems far from established Council territory. They would be watched carefully. Any sign of aggression would result in immediate military response. Sarah Chen had returned to Earth to report everything she had learned. The news that humanity was not alone in the universe had changed everything. Governments that had been arguing about space colonization suddenly united behind a common goal. Humanity needed to establish itself among the stars quickly, before the Council decided they were too dangerous to exist. 3 colony worlds were now being built. Outpost Meridian was the largest, established on a planet called New Terra. It was a beautiful world with breathable air, liquid water, and vast forests. 2 million humans now called it home, building cities and farms under an alien sky. General Marcus Webb stood on the command deck of Outpost Meridian's orbital defense station, looking down at the planet below. He had been promoted after the Perseverance incident, put in charge of defending humanity's most important colony. It was a job he took very seriously. The defense network around New Terra was impressive by human standards. Dozens of weapon satellites orbited the planet. Missile platforms stood ready to launch. Fighter squadrons trained constantly, preparing for threats from space. But Marcus knew it was nothing compared to what the truly powerful species in the galaxy could field. That's why he felt sick to his stomach as he watched the sensor display. 50 ships had just entered the system. They were massive, dark vessels that looked like they were built from volcanic rock and metal. Their weapons were already powered up, energy signatures burning bright on the sensors. Kavarn Dominion Fleet, Lieutenant Jessica Park said from her station. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the fear underneath.
"Sir, those are the Council's enforcers."
They've never failed a conquest. Marcus had read everything available about the Kavarn. They were one of the oldest and most feared species in the galaxy. When the Council needed to force a species into submission, they sent the Kavarn. Their reputation was built on absolute victory and overwhelming force. A communication signal came through. Marcus accepted it, knowing what was coming. The face on the screen was nightmarish. The Kavarn looked like something from humanity's worst legends about demons. Red skin stretched over a skull-like face. Black eyes showed no emotion. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding rocks. "Human colony, you are in violation of Galactic Council regulations," the Kavarn commander said. "Your species attacked a Council member vessel without provocation. You have expanded beyond your allowed territory. You have refused to submit to proper authority. The Council has ordered your pacification. Surrender immediately, and you will be relocated to a reservation world. Resist and you will be eliminated." Marcus felt rage burning in his chest, but he kept his voice calm and professional. "This is General Marcus Webb, commander of New Terra Defense Forces," he said. "We are peaceful colonists building a new home. We have violated no laws. The Zarians attacked us first and we only defended ourselves. We will not surrender our homes." The Kavarn commander's expression did not change. It simply nodded once. "Then you have chosen death," it said, and ended the communication. Red targeting beams reached out from the Kavarn fleet, painting the defense satellites and orbital stations. Marcus knew those beams would be followed by weapons fire in moments. "Sound the evacuation alarm," Marcus ordered. "Get everyone into the underground shelters. Move." Across New Terra, sirens began wailing. 2 million people heard the sound and knew what it meant. They had practiced for this. Every colonist knew where to go and what to do. Parents grabbed children. Teachers led students into the tunnels that had been dug deep beneath the cities. Emergency supplies and medical equipment were already waiting in the massive underground complexes. The evacuation plan was based on an old Earth strategy. If the enemy controlled the space around your planet, you couldn't stop orbital bombardment. But you could make sure your people survived it by going underground. The real fight would come later. Marcus watched on the monitors as the Kavarn fleet moved into bombardment position. The first energy beams lanced down from space, striking the capital city of New Hope. Buildings exploded. Streets melted under the intense heat, but the shelters held, protected by layers of rock and reinforced metal. "Sir, the evacuation is at 70%, Lieutenant Parks reported. We need more time." "Then we'll buy it," Marcus said grimly. All defense platforms opened fire. The orbital weapons launched everything they had. Missiles streaked toward the Kavarn fleet. Railguns fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Energy weapons tried to punch through the alien ship's shields. The Kavarn vessels absorbed the attack with barely any damage. Their shields were simply too strong. They returned fire methodically, destroying one defense platform after another. Within 30 minutes, most of humanity's orbital defenses were gone, but those 30 minutes had been enough. The evacuation was complete. 2 million humans were now safe in the deep shelters, beyond the reach of orbital weapons. The Kavarn commander appeared on the communication screen again, looking annoyed. "Your orbital defenses are destroyed," it said. "Surrender now or we will begin systematic bombardment of your cities." Marcus smiled coldly. "Go ahead. You'll find them empty." The Kavarn commander's expression finally changed, showing something that might have been surprise. It gave orders in its own language. The bombardment intensified. Kavarn warships methodically destroyed every building on the surface. Cities that had taken months to build were reduced to rubble in hours, but there were no casualties. The colonists watched on monitors from deep underground, safe in their shelters. They felt the ground shake with each impact, but the shelters were designed to withstand this kind of attack. After 2 days of continuous bombardment, the Kavarn fleet stopped firing. The surface of New Terra looked like a devastated wasteland. Every structure had been destroyed. But the human colonists were still alive and, more importantly, still defiant. What the Kavarn did not know was that the real defense plan was just beginning. Marcus had studied Earth's military history carefully. He knew that conventional warfare against a superior enemy was suicide. But throughout human history, weaker forces had defeated stronger ones through guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, and absolute determination. The underground complexes were not just shelters. They were military bases, weapons factories, and training centers. While the Kavarn celebrated their easy victory on the surface, humans were preparing for a very different kind of war. The Kavarn began landing occupation forces. 50,000 soldiers in heavy armor marched out of transport ships, ready to take control of the conquered planet. They expected to find a defeated population ready to submit. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. The first Kavarn patrols disappeared without a trace. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. Search parties found no bodies, no evidence of what happened. Just empty armor and weapons lying in the rubble. Then the attacks began. Hidden tunnels opened suddenly, and humans emerged to strike quickly before vanishing again. They used weapons modified from mining equipment, explosives made from colony supplies, and tactics that the Kavarn had never encountered. The aliens were used to conventional warfare between organized armies. They had no experience with this kind of shadowy, unpredictable fighting. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was one of the people leading these attacks. She had been a mining engineer before the invasion, designing equipment to extract resources from New Terra's mountains. Now she used that same expertise to create weapons. Industrial lasers became sniper rifles. Excavation charges became landmines. Construction drones became flying bombs. Remember, we're not trying to win conventional battles, Yuki told her team before each mission. We're trying to make them afraid. We're trying to make them understand that every minute they stay here will cost them. The humans attacked supply lines. They sabotaged equipment. They set traps in the ruins of their own cities. Kavarn soldiers began to feel like they were being hunted by ghosts. They could not see their enemy. They could not predict where the next attack would come from. Every shadow might hide a human fighter. Every pile of rubble might contain a bomb. The Kavarn commander, war leader Thrak, had never experienced anything like this. In every previous conquest, the target species either surrendered after orbital bombardment or fought in organized military formations that could be destroyed. But humans did neither. They hid, they struck from nowhere, and they vanished before retaliation was possible. What disturbed Thrak most was the humans' willingness to sacrifice themselves. Several times, human fighters had carried explosives directly into Kavarn positions, killing themselves to eliminate enemy soldiers. This was incomprehensible. In Kavarn culture, as in most galactic species, individual survival was the highest priority. Deliberately choosing death was considered insane. But humans did it regularly, not because they wanted to die, but because they believed their sacrifice would protect others. Thrak began to understand that humans valued the survival of their group more than their individual lives. This made them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. After 1 month of occupation, the Kavarn had lost 10,000 soldiers. They controlled nothing except the landing zones around their ships. The rest of the planet belonged to the human resistance. Thrak reported back to the Council, requesting reinforcements and permission to use more extreme measures. Instead, he received new orders. The Council was concerned about the losses. The Kavarn Dominion's reputation for invincibility was being damaged by their failure to control a single human colony. More ships arrived, bringing the Kavarn fleet to over 100 vessels. They began a new strategy, using sensors to map the underground tunnel networks. They planned to flush out the humans by pumping poison gas into the shelters. Marcus watched the Kavarn preparations on his monitors. He knew this new strategy could work. The shelters were designed to protect against orbital bombardment, not chemical weapons. If the Kavarn succeeded, millions would die. It was time for the most desperate part of the plan. Begin Operation Last Stand, Marcus ordered quietly. Throughout the underground bases, volunteers gathered. These were people who had chosen to stay behind for this final mission. They were soldiers, engineers, doctors, and ordinary colonists. Each had volunteered knowing they probably would not survive. Their mission was simple: disable the Kavarn fleet. Small teams moved through hidden tunnels that led to the surface. They emerged near the Kavarn landing zones where the enemy ships sat. Moving through the ruins under cover of darkness, they attached explosives to landing gear, cut through external cables, and sabotaged fuel lines. The Kavarn had guards posted, but human fighters drew them away with diversionary attacks. While the aliens responded to threats on one side of their camp, humans worked unseen on the other side. Lieutenant Sophia Reeves led one of these teams. She was young, barely 25, with dark hair and determined eyes. She had been a shuttle pilot before the invasion. Now she was planting bombs on a Kavarn troop transport. "Charges set," she whispered into her radio. "Moving to Target 2. Around the planet, dozens of other teams reported similar success. The Kavarn were so focused on their upcoming gas attack that they failed to notice the sabotage happening right under their noses. When the sun rose over New Terra, the Kavarn prepared to launch their final assault on the human shelters. War leader Thrak gave the order to begin pumping poison gas into the detected tunnel systems. That's when Marcus gave his own order: detonate. All across the planet, hundreds of explosives went off simultaneously. Kavarn ships exploded. Landing gear collapsed. Fuel tanks ruptured. Within seconds, half the Kavarn fleet on the ground was destroyed or crippled. At the same moment, human fighters emerged from every tunnel. They had been holding back, conserving their strength. Now they attacked with everything they had. Makeshift rockets streaked toward Kavarn ships. Snipers picked off officers. Suicide bombers drove vehicles loaded with explosives into enemy positions. The Kavarn fleet in orbit tried to provide support, but they could not fire on their own troops. The battle had become close quarters, with humans and Kavarn soldiers fighting among the wreckage of destroyed ships. Sophia and her team did not try to escape after planting their bombs. Instead, they entered the damaged Kavarn ships and fought their way toward the command centers. It was suicidal, but it was also necessary. Every Kavarn they killed was one less enemy threatening the shelters. Sophia found herself in a corridor facing a Kavarn soldier in full armor. The alien was bigger and stronger, carrying better weapons. But Sophia was faster and more desperate. She dodged its weapon fire, closed the distance, and detonated an explosive charge at point-blank range. The blast killed them both. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human fighters traded their lives to take out high-value targets. It was brutal, bloody, and effective. By the end of the day, the Kavarn had lost 60% of their fleet. The survivors retreated to orbit, shocked and horrified by what had happened. They had conquered dozens of species, but they had never faced anything like humanity's desperate resistance. War leader Thrak stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. 30,000 Kavarn soldiers dead, 50 ships destroyed or damaged beyond repair, and the human colonists were still alive, still fighting. For the first time in his long military career, Thrak felt fear. Not fear of death, but fear of an enemy that could not be defeated by conventional means. The humans had shown they would sacrifice anything to protect their home. They fought without honor, without rules, and without mercy. Thrak made his decision. He opened a communication channel to the surface. "General Webb, this is War Leader Thrak," he said. "The Kavarn Dominion acknowledges your resolve. We are withdrawing from this system. Know that you have earned something rare, the respect of the Kavarn." Marcus appeared on the screen, looking exhausted but unbowed. "Tell your Galactic Council that humanity does not submit. Tell them we will defend our homes with everything we have, and tell them that if they leave us in peace, we will not seek conflict. But if they attack us again, we will make them regret it." Thrak nodded slowly. "They will hear your message, human. The galaxy has taken notice of your species. What happens next is beyond my authority." The Kavarn fleet jumped out of the system, leaving New Terra behind. The colonists emerged from their shelters to find their cities destroyed, but their people alive. They had lost 12,000 defenders, including Sophia Reeves and hundreds of other volunteers who had given their lives in the final assault. Marcus stood in the ruins of New Hope, looking at the devastation. They had won, but at a terrible cost. He wondered if humanity could survive many more victories like this. What he did not know was that the news of New Terra's defense was spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. Every species in the Council was hearing about the humans who had driven off the Kavarn. Some were frightened, some were impressed, and some were beginning to wonder if humanity might be the answer to threats the Council had never been able to face. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest constructed space in known civilization. It hung in the center of Nexus Prime Station, a massive sphere where representatives from 200 species gathered to debate the fate of entire worlds. The chamber had witnessed 50,000 years of decisions, agreements, and compromises that shaped galactic society. Today it witnessed something new. Fear. High Arbiter Velshara floated in her gravity field at the center of the chamber, her ancient form barely visible through the layers of protective shielding her species required. She was old even by galactic standards, having served the Council for 3,000 years. In all that time, she had never seen the Council members so divided and frightened. "The matter before us is clear," spoke Ambassador Kriath of the Zetharian Empire. His 4 eyes blazed with anger as he addressed the assembly. "The humans attacked our vessel without provocation. They destroyed a Kavarn fleet. They refuse to accept Council authority. They are a threat that must be eliminated before they grow stronger." Murmurs of agreement rippled through sections of the chamber. Several species feared humanity's aggressive nature and unpredictable tactics, but other voices spoke in opposition. Ambassador Thresk of the Kalara Commonwealth rose to speak. Her species were peaceful farmers with soft blue skin and large, gentle eyes. "The Zetharians fired first," Thresk said softly. "The humans only defended themselves. Is that not their right? And as for the Kavarn, they invaded a human colony world. Again, the humans only protected their home. Perhaps the problem is not with humanity, but with how we have treated them." More murmurs, these ones uncertain. The Council had always operated on a strict hierarchy of power. Older, more established species commanded respect and authority, New species were expected to accept lower positions and work their way up over thousands of years. Humanity had rejected this system completely. Velshara listened to the arguments with growing concern. She had reviewed all the data about humanity, everything the Council had learned about this troublesome new species. What she found had disturbed her deeply. "Silence," Velshara said, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. The argument stopped immediately. The High Arbiter's word carried absolute authority. "Before we decide humanity's fate, we must understand what we face," Velshara continued. "I have ordered a complete analysis of Earth and its history. The results are available for all Council members to review. I suggest you do so before this debate continues." Velshara activated the central display. Images of Earth appeared, rotating slowly for all to see. It looked like a beautiful world, covered in blue oceans and green continents, but appearances were deceiving. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world," Velshara announced. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Death worlds were rare and dangerous places where life struggled to exist. Most Council species came from Class 3 to Class 5 worlds, comfortable planets where survival was relatively easy. "The human homeworld experiences extreme weather variations," Velshara continued. "Temperature swings from freezing to scorching. Regular natural disasters including earthquakes, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions. The planet has experienced multiple mass extinction events. Ice ages that covered entire continents. Asteroid impacts that killed most life on the surface." Images flashed across the display showing Earth's violent geological history. Council members watched in horror as they saw volcanoes erupting, massive storms devastating coastlines, and ice sheets grinding across landscapes. "The dominant species on Earth, humanity, evolved as apex predators," Velshara said. "They are persistence hunters capable of tracking prey for days without rest. Their bodies are adapted for endurance and violence. They have more efficient cooling systems, greater stamina, and higher pain tolerance than most galactic species." More images appeared showing humans running long distances, lifting heavy objects, and surviving injuries that would kill other species. "But physical capabilities are not what makes humanity truly dangerous," Velshara said quietly. "It is their history." The display changed to show human civilizations throughout time. The Council members watched as humans built empires, fought wars, created art, and destroyed each other repeatedly. "Humans have been in a state of warfare for their entire recorded history," Velshara said. "They developed weapons technology at an unprecedented rate. Stone tools to nuclear weapons in less than 10,000 years. They created methods of killing that we banned long ago. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, atomic bombs that could destroy entire cities." The display showed mushroom clouds rising over human cities. Council members recoiled in horror. Nuclear weapons were forbidden by galactic law, considered too destructive and indiscriminate for civilized warfare. "They used these weapons on themselves," Velshara said, "on their own kind, and survived. Humanity knows nuclear fire intimately because they have experienced it firsthand." Ambassador Kriath tried to interrupt. "This only proves they are violent savages who must be contained." "Let her finish," said a deep voice from the back of the chamber. War leader Thrak of the Kavarn had arrived, still bearing injuries from the battle at New Terra. His presence silenced the Zarian immediately. Velshara continued. "I want you all to understand something crucial. Every species in this council evolved on worlds where survival was manageable. Your ancestors faced predators, yes, but nothing like what humans endured. You developed intelligence as a tool for cooperation and resource management. Humans developed intelligence as a weapon for survival against a planet that was actively trying to kill them." She paused to let that sink in before continuing. "Look at your own histories. When your species developed civilization, wars became less common. Resources were shared. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation. This is because your worlds provided enough for everyone. Earth did not. Humans fought for territory, for food, for water, for survival itself. They organized into tribes, nations, and empires that constantly competed for limited resources. They learned to fight not just against nature, but against each other, generation after generation for hundreds of thousands of years. The display showed human warriors throughout history, ancient soldiers with spears and shields, medieval knights in armor, modern soldiers with advanced weapons. The technology changed, but the look in their eyes remained the same. Determination, courage, and something the council species rarely felt: the willingness to die for something they believed in. "What disturbs me most is this," Velshara said, highlighting a particular section of data. "Humans developed a concept they call hope. It is not merely optimism. It is the belief that things can improve through effort and sacrifice. When faced with impossible situations, humans do not accept defeat. They continue fighting because they believe their struggle matters." She pulled up battle records from New Terra. 12,000 humans died defending their colony. They knew they would probably die. They volunteered anyway, not because they wanted death, but because they hoped their sacrifice would save others. War leader Thrak spoke then, his voice heavy with respect. "I have fought in 1,000 battles across 500 worlds. I have never seen anything like what the humans did. They turned their entire colony into a weapon. They made us afraid of shadows and ruins. They died attacking us with smiles on their faces, knowing they were protecting their families." He looked around the chamber at the assembled species. "I tell you now, if humanity decides we are their enemy, they will not stop. They will not negotiate. They will fight until they win, or until every last one of them is dead. And I am no longer certain we could win that war." Silence filled the chamber. The admission from the Kavarn, the galaxy's most feared warriors, sent waves of shock through the council. Ambassador Thresk spoke up again. "Perhaps we should ask ourselves why they fought so fiercely. We sent the Kavarn to conquer them. We tried to force them to accept our rules. If we had approached them with respect instead of threats, would they have been our friends instead of our enemies? They are too dangerous to befriend," Kriath insisted. "Their capacity for violence is too great." "Violence in defense is not the same as aggression," Velshara countered. "Yes, humans are capable of terrible destruction, but review their diplomatic transmissions. They requested peaceful coexistence. They asked only to be left alone to build their colonies. We responded with demands and threats. The fault may be partly our own." She pulled up more data. "I have reviewed the histories of the founding members of this council. Do you know what I found? Almost every species went through a violent period during their development. They fought wars. They struggled for resources. They committed atrocities. But as they achieved stability and abundance, they became peaceful. Humanity is still in their violent phase because they have only just reached the stars. Give them time, resources, and reason to trust us, and they may become as peaceful as any council species. But treat them as enemies, and they will become the most dangerous enemy we have ever faced." Ambassador Kriath scoffed. "You suggest we reward their violence with acceptance?" "I suggest we learn from our mistakes," Velshara said sharply. "This council was formed 50,000 years ago by species who learned that cooperation was better than conflict. Have we forgotten that lesson?" A new voice spoke then. It came from a section of the chamber rarely heard from, the observers' gallery. These were species who had joined the council only recently in historical terms, within the last 5,000 years. They had less power but still held voting rights. "High Arbiter, if I may speak," the voice said. It belonged to Ambassador Lauren of the Mendari people, a species that had been integrated into the council just 3,000 years ago. "Speak, Ambassador Lauren," Velshara said. "My people remember when we first encountered the council," Lauren said. "We were treated with suspicion and contempt. We were given harsh restrictions and impossible demands. We nearly went to war before wiser voices prevailed and offered us genuine partnership. The Mendari are loyal council members today because we were given respect, not because we were beaten into submission." Lauren's avatar gestured toward the images of humanity. "I see the same fire in these humans that burned in my ancestors. If we crush them, we create a permanent enemy. If we welcome them, we might gain powerful allies." The debate continued for hours. Species after species voiced their opinions. Some wanted humanity destroyed. Others wanted them contained and monitored. A growing minority began suggesting something unprecedented: immediate full council membership without the usual waiting period. Finally, Velshara called for a vote. "The proposal is this," she said. "Humanity will be granted conditional council membership. They may maintain their current colonies without interference. In exchange, they must prove they can be constructive members of galactic society. They will be given a test." "What kind of test?" Kriath demanded. "The Ravagers have been detected near council space again," Velshara said grimly. Several council members made sounds of fear at the mention of that name. "They are heading toward Kalara Prime. Standard protocol is to evacuate Council personnel and abandon the planet to minimize losses. Ambassador Thresk gasped. Kalara Prime is my homeworld. 8 billion Kalarans live there. You cannot simply abandon them. The Council does not have sufficient military force to stop a Ravager swarm while protecting our core worlds, Velshara said sadly. It is a tactical necessity. However, I propose we inform humanity of the situation. If they choose to defend Kalara Prime without Council support, and if they succeed, it will prove they can be protectors rather than conquerors. You would let them face the Ravagers? Krieth said incredulously. The humans will be slaughtered. The Ravagers have destroyed civilizations older and stronger than theirs. Perhaps, Velshara agreed, but if humanity is as dangerous as you claim, let us see if that danger can be pointed at our true enemies rather than at each other. If they succeed, we gain valuable allies. If they fail, the problem of humanity solves itself. It was a cold calculation, but the Council had survived for 50,000 years by making difficult choices. The vote was called. After tallying the results, Velshara announced the decision. The proposal passes. Humanity will be informed of the situation at Kalara Prime. They may choose to respond or not. The Council will observe and judge their actions accordingly. As the Council session ended, Velshara remained in her gravity field, thinking about the choice they had made. She had not told the Council everything she had learned about humanity. There were details in the historical data that both frightened and fascinated her. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself several times. Nuclear war had come close to happening multiple times. Environmental collapse had threatened their civilization. Diseases had killed millions, yet each time they had survived and grown stronger. They learned from their mistakes. They adapted. They endured. Velshara's own species had nearly gone extinct 2,000 years ago. A plague had killed 90% of her people. She was one of the few survivors who remembered those dark times. She recognized in humanity the same desperate determination that had saved her own species. The question was whether that determination would make humanity a force for good or evil in the galaxy. The test at Kalara Prime would provide answers. She opened a communication channel to Earth. It was time to see what humans would choose when faced with an impossible situation. Would they help strangers who had tried to destroy them, or would they watch from safety as billions died? Velshara suspected she already knew the answer. She had seen the look in Commander Chen's eyes during the diplomatic meetings. She had heard the tone in General Webb's voice when he defied the Kavarn. Humans did not abandon those in need, even when it would be easier or safer to do so. That quality might save them, or it might get them killed. Either way, the galaxy was about to discover what humanity truly represented. Admiral James Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Constitution, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too much combat. Around him, the crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing for the jump to Kalara Prime. The message from the Galactic Council had arrived 3 days ago. It was brief and cold. The Ravagers were coming to Kalara Prime. The Council was evacuating its personnel. 8 billion Kalaran civilians would be left behind to die. Humanity was under no obligation to help, but the Council would be watching to see what they chose to do. James had read the message and felt rage burning in his chest. The Council would abandon billions of innocent people to save their own ships and soldiers. It was the kind of cold calculation that treated lives as numbers instead of as people with families, dreams, and futures. He had called an emergency meeting of Earth's military command. The debate had been short. We don't have enough ships, one admiral had argued. The Third Fleet is only 47 vessels. Against a Ravager swarm, that's suicide. Then it's suicide, James had replied simply. We didn't come to space to become the kind of people who watch billions die because helping them is inconvenient. The vote had been unanimous. The Third Fleet would go to Kalara Prime. They would buy time for the civilians to evacuate. They would fight the Ravagers with everything they had. And if they died doing it, at least they would die knowing they had tried. Now, 3 days later, the fleet was ready. 47 ships, 20,000 crew members. All volunteers who knew this might be a one-way trip. All ships report ready, Admiral, reported Commander Lisa Torres from her station. She was young, barely 30, with sharp intelligence and unwavering courage. James was proud to serve with her. Send the order, James said. The fleet jumps in 60 seconds. He activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice reached every crew member on every ship in the fleet. This is Admiral Rodriguez. In a few moments, we will jump to Kalara Prime to face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations older than ours. The Galactic Council told us we don't have to do this. They told us it's not our problem. They're right. We don't have to help the Kalarans. But we're going to anyway because that's what humans do. We help those who can't help themselves. We stand up to bullies. We fight for people we've never met because it's the right thing to do. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I won't lie to you. Many of us won't survive this. The Ravagers are stronger than us. They have more ships, better weapons. But we have something they don't have. We have each other. We have courage. And we have the knowledge that win or lose, we're doing something that matters. The Kalarans will remember humanity today. The galaxy will remember. But most importantly, we'll remember who we are and what we stand for. For Earth. For humanity. For everyone who can't fight for themselves. Let's show the galaxy what we're made of. The crew cheered. The sound echoed through the corridors of all 47 ships. Then, in perfect synchronization, the Third Fleet jumped into the unknown. They emerged in the Kalara system to find chaos. The Ravagers had already arrived. Massive biomechanical ships filled the space around the planet. Creatures of flesh and metal fused together into nightmarish forms. They were feeding, sending beams of energy down to the surface that converted all biological matter into fuel for their endless hunger. On the planet below, 8 billion Kalarans huddled in their cities watching death descend from the sky. They had accepted that this was the end. The Council had told them there was no hope. The best they could do was pray for a quick death. Then the human fleet appeared. Ambassador Thresk was on the surface, having refused to evacuate with the other Council personnel. If her people were going to die, she would die with them. She stood in the capital city watching the Ravager ships through a window when the sensors detected new arrivals. Ships emerging from jump space, a technician reported, his voice hopeless. Probably more Ravagers. But then the technician's expression changed to confusion. Wait, those aren't Ravagers. The signatures match human vessels. But that's impossible. Why would humans come here? Thresk felt hope ignite in her chest for the first time in days. She activated the communication system, trying to reach the human fleet. Human vessels, this is Ambassador Thresk of Kalara Prime. Why are you here? The Council said no help was coming. Admiral Rodriguez's face appeared on the screen. He was smiling. But it was the kind of smile warriors wore before battle. Fierce and determined. Ambassador, this is Admiral James Rodriguez of the United Earth Space Force. We're here because you need help. And we're not the kind of people who abandon those in need. Start evacuating your civilians. We'll buy you whatever time we can. Thresk felt tears running down her face. Admiral, there are 8 billion people on this planet. We need weeks to evacuate that many. You cannot possibly hold out that long against the Ravagers. Watch us, James said simply. Get your people moving, Ambassador. We'll handle the rest. The human fleet moved into position between the Ravagers and the planet. 47 ships against over 200 biomechanical horrors. The math was impossible. But humans had never been good at accepting impossible odds. All ships, weapons free, James ordered. Let's remind these things why you don't threaten innocent people. The Constitution fired first. Missiles streaked out toward the nearest Ravager ship. Nuclear warheads designed to punch through any defense. The explosions lit up space like miniature suns. When the light faded, the Ravager ship was damaged but still functional. Its biological components regenerated the damage within seconds. They adapt fast, Torres reported. First strike did significant damage. Second strike barely scratched them. James nodded grimly. The Ravagers were learning from each attack, evolving their defenses in real time. It was one of the things that made them so dangerous. But humans were good at adapting too. Switch to kinetic weapons, James ordered. Railguns and mass drivers. Let's see how they handle solid projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The fleet changed tactics. Solid metal slugs launched from magnetic accelerators slammed into Ravager ships at incredible velocities. The impacts were devastating. Holes punched through biomechanical hulls. Ships spun out of control. The Ravagers could adapt their energy shields, but they couldn't change the laws of physics. But there were so many of them. For every Ravager ship damaged, 2 more moved forward. They began firing back, using bioorganic weapons that launched acid, toxins, and flesh-eating organisms. The human shields held, but only barely. Sir, we're being surrounded, Torres reported. They're trying to cut us off from the planet. Then we'll break through, James said. All ships full speed ahead. We're going right through their formation. The human fleet accelerated directly toward the Ravager swarm. It was a suicidal tactic by conventional military standards, but James had studied the Ravagers' behavior patterns. They expected prey to run or to maintain defensive positions. They had never faced an enemy that charged straight at them. The surprise worked. The Ravager ships scattered, confused by the aggressive maneuver. The human fleet punched through their formation, firing in all directions as they went. Ravager ships exploded on all sides. The humans emerged on the other side of the formation, closer to the planet and in a better defensive position. "Damage report," James called out. 3 ships heavily damaged, 2 lost shields entirely, but we're all still operational, Torres replied. Down on Kalara Prime, Ambassador Thresk watched the battle from the ground. The entire planet was mobilizing for evacuation. Every transport ship, every cargo hauler, every vessel capable of carrying passengers was being loaded with Kalarans. But it was slow, so painfully slow. They had evacuated only 100 million people so far. At this rate, they would need 16 days to evacuate everyone. The human fleet could not possibly hold out that long, but they tried. For 3 days, the Third Fleet fought without rest. They used every tactic in humanity's long history of warfare. They set ambushes. They used hit-and-run attacks. They sacrificed damaged ships as decoys to draw Ravagers away from the planet. The crew worked beyond exhaustion. Engineers kept damaged systems running through improvisation and sheer determination. Medical teams treated wounded while the battle raged around them. Everyone did more than should have been possible. On the 4th day, the Ravagers changed tactics. They stopped trying to destroy the human fleet, and instead focused on bypassing them to reach the planet. A massive group of Ravager ships broke through the human defensive line and headed straight for Kalara Prime. James watched them go and made his decision. "All ships, new orders. We're going to intercept them directly. Ramming speed." The bridge crew looked at him in shock. Torres spoke carefully. "Sir, ramming will destroy our ships." "I know," James said quietly. "But it will also destroy them. And it will buy more time for the evacuation. Load all remaining weapons. We're going to hit them with everything we have, then we're going to hit them with our ships themselves." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All hands, this is Admiral Rodriguez. We knew this might happen. We knew we might have to make the ultimate sacrifice. That time has come. I want you to know it's been an honor serving with you. Your courage has saved billions of lives. Your sacrifice will be remembered forever." He paused, then added, "Anyone who wants to take a shuttle and escape to the planet, do so now. I won't think less of anyone who chooses to live. But if you're staying, let's make this count." Not a single person left their post. 20,000 crew members chose to stay. The Constitution accelerated to full speed, targeting the largest Ravager ship. Around it, the other 46 ships did the same, each selecting a target. They fired every weapon, launched every missile, emptied every magazine. The Ravagers reeled under the assault. Then the human ship struck. The Constitution slammed into the Ravager vessel at incredible velocity. The impact was like a small nuclear explosion. Both ships disintegrated in a ball of fire and twisted metal. Around them, 46 other ships made similar sacrifices. 47 explosions lit up space simultaneously. The Ravager attack force was annihilated. The path to the planet was clear again. Ambassador Thresk watched from the surface as the human fleet died. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by grief and gratitude. The humans had given everything to protect her people. They had chosen to die so that strangers might live. But the battle was not over. More Ravager ships were coming. The evacuation was only 50% complete. 4 billion Kalarans were still on the planet. Then something unexpected happened. Ships began arriving through jump points. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. They were from species all across the Council. Ships from the Mendari, the Vren, even some Zarians. They had heard what humanity was doing. They had watched the Third Fleet sacrifice itself for people they barely knew. And they had decided they could not let humanity fight alone. War Leader Thrax's voice came over the communication channels. "This is the Kavarn Dominion Fleet. We have come to honor the humans' courage. All ships defend the planet." The newly arrived fleet engaged the Ravagers. The battle that had been one-sided suddenly became even. The Ravagers, faced with organized resistance from multiple species, began to fall back. In the debris field where the Third Fleet had made its last stand, sensors detected something impossible. A single escape pod, broadcasting an emergency beacon. It was from the Constitution. The pod was recovered by a Kalaran transport ship. Inside, barely conscious, was Admiral James Rodriguez. Against all odds, he had survived when the Constitution's bridge section had been blown clear in the explosion. His crew had not been so lucky. He was the sole survivor of the Third Fleet. When James regained consciousness 3 days later, he found himself in a medical bay on Kalara Prime. Ambassador Thresk was sitting beside his bed, along with High Arbiter Velshara, who had traveled from Nexus Prime specifically to see him. Admiral Rodriguez, Velshara said, "You have accomplished something unprecedented. The evacuation of Kalara Prime is 99% complete. 7.9 billion Kalarans are alive because of humanity's sacrifice. The Ravagers have been driven off. You have saved an entire species." James tried to sit up, but pain stopped him. "My crew?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Gone," Velshara said gently. "All of them died in the final attack. You are the only survivor of the Third Fleet." James closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those losses. 20,000 people. Good people. People with families and dreams and futures all gone. They were heroes, Ambassador Thresk said, tears streaming down her face. "Every Kelleran knows their names. We will never forget what they did for us." "The entire galaxy knows," Velshara added. The battle was broadcast on all Council channels. Every species watched as humanity sacrificed its ships to protect strangers. Many were moved by what they saw. That is why reinforcements arrived. Your courage inspired others to be courageous. She leaned closer. "The Council has voted, Admiral. Humanity is granted full membership effective immediately. All restrictions are lifted. You have proven that your species can be protectors rather than conquerors. You have earned the respect of the entire galaxy." James opened his eyes and looked at them both. "We didn't do it for respect. We did it because it was right." "I know," Velshara said. "That is exactly why humanity deserves to be part of the Council. You have reminded us of principles we had forgotten. That some things are worth fighting for, that courage matters. That hope is not just a word, but a force that can change the universe." Ambassador Thresk took his hand gently. "The Kalaran people have sworn an oath, Admiral. We pledge ourselves to humanity. Forever. You saved us when no one else would. We will never forget that debt." James managed a weak smile. "We don't need oaths or debts. We just need friends. The galaxy is a dangerous place. We should face it together." Over the following weeks, as James recovered from his injuries, the story of the Battle of Kalara Prime spread across the galaxy. Humanity became a legend, the species that had sacrificed everything to save strangers. The warriors who taught the galaxy what courage truly meant. 40 other species formally requested alliances with humanity. War leader Thrak visited Earth personally to propose joint military training. The Kavarn wanted to learn human tactics, and they wanted to teach humans their own battle techniques. The Galactic Council changed in fundamental ways. Species began questioning old policies about abandoning worlds to the Ravagers. If humans could inspire such courage, perhaps the Council could be braver too. Perhaps they could stand and fight instead of always retreating. James eventually returned to Earth. He was given the highest honors humanity could bestow. But he refused to accept them. "Honor the 20,000 who didn't come home," he said. "They're the real heroes." A monument was built in orbit around Earth. It listed the names of every crew member who died at Kalara Prime. Billions of beings from across the galaxy visited it over the years, paying respects to the humans who had changed everything. But the most important change was simpler. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not just dangerous. They were brave. They were compassionate. They were willing to sacrifice for others. And perhaps most importantly, they could inspire others to be better than they had been before. 3 years had passed since the Battle of Kalara Prime. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity was no longer a new species struggling for acceptance. They were now full members of the Galactic Council, with representatives serving in important positions throughout Council space. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the Council chamber on Nexus Prime Station, wearing the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She had come a long way from the captain of a colony ship fighting off Zarian attackers. Now she was Earth's primary representative to the Council, responsible for speaking on behalf of all humanity. Around her, the massive chamber buzzed with worried conversations. An emergency session had been called. The news was bad, very bad. High Arbiter Velshara called the session to order. Her ancient voice carried concern that made everyone in the chamber feel afraid. Council members, we have received confirmation of what we feared most, Velshara said. The hierarchy has returned. The chamber erupted in panic. Species that rarely showed emotion began shouting or making distressed sounds. Sarah had learned about the hierarchy during her diplomatic training. They were the monsters from the galaxy's ancient history. Over 100,000 years ago, the hierarchy had ruled the galaxy with absolute cruelty. They were an ancient civilization that saw other species as resources to be exploited. They enslaved entire worlds, harvested populations for genetic material, and destroyed any species that resisted. The suffering they caused was beyond comprehension. Eventually, a coalition of species had fought back. The war lasted thousands of years and killed billions, but finally the hierarchy was defeated. The survivors fled into deep space, and the galaxy had been free of them ever since. The Galactic Council was formed from the alliance that had defeated them, dedicated to ensuring such tyranny never happened again. But now they were back. And according to intelligence reports, they were stronger than ever. Ambassador Krieth of the Zarians spoke first. We must surrender immediately. The hierarchy cannot be defeated. Our ancestors barely survived their last war. We do not have the strength to resist them again. Several other species agreed. The fear in the chamber was overwhelming. These were civilizations that had existed for tens of thousands of years, and they were ready to give up after receiving a single message. Sarah stood up. What exactly did this message say? Velshara played the transmission for everyone to hear. The voice was cold, mechanical, and filled with absolute confidence. Lesser species of the Council, the hierarchy has observed your pathetic civilization for long enough. We have returned to reclaim what is rightfully ours. You will submit to our authority within 30 standard days. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species. Compliance will result in servitude. Choose wisely. The message ended. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. She had heard this kind of talk before. Bullies always sounded the same, whether they were schoolyard thugs or ancient alien empires. We should negotiate terms of surrender, Ambassador Krieth said. Perhaps if we cooperate fully, they will show mercy. They showed no mercy last time, War Leader Thrax said bluntly. The Kavarn commander had become one of humanity's strongest allies after fighting alongside them multiple times. The hierarchy does not do mercy. They will enslave us all regardless of whether we fight or surrender. At least if we fight, we die free. We cannot win, Krieth shouted. Their technology is superior. Their ships outnumber ours. Their experience in warfare spans millions of years. We are insects to them. Sarah stepped forward to the speaking platform. May I address the council? Velshara nodded. Earth's representative has the floor. Sarah looked around the chamber at the gathered species. She saw fear, despair, and resignation. These were civilizations that had forgotten how to fight. They had grown comfortable during thousands of years of peace. The idea of real war terrified them. I have a question for the council, Sarah said. Has anyone actually fought the hierarchy? I mean, personally, anyone here in this room? Silence greeted her question. The war against the hierarchy had ended 100,000 years ago. Every being who had fought in that war was long dead. All that remained were stories and historical records. Then how do you know they cannot be defeated? Sarah asked. You're afraid of stories. Legends from the ancient past. Has anyone considered that maybe, just maybe, the hierarchy is afraid too? Afraid? Krieth scoffed. Of what? They are the most powerful civilization in galactic history. They were, Sarah corrected. But they lost. They were beaten and driven away. Now they're back, and instead of attacking immediately, they sent a message demanding surrender. Why would they do that if they were so certain of victory? The question made several council members pause. Sarah continued, warming to her argument. I think they're testing us. They want to know if we're still the species that defeated them before, or if we've become soft. And right now, by talking about surrender, we're showing them we're soft. Your species has been in space for less than a decade, Krieth said coldly. You know nothing of the hierarchy's power. You're right, Sarah agreed. I don't know anything about them except what I've read. But I know about bullies, and this message sounds exactly like every bully humanity has ever faced. Big talk, threats, demands for submission. It's designed to make us afraid so we give up without fighting. She looked directly at Krieth. 3 years ago, your empire demanded we surrender. We refused and fought back. The Kavarn Dominion came to destroy our colony. We drove them away. The Council told us to prove ourselves at Kalara Prime. We sacrificed our entire fleet to save people we'd never met. Every time someone told us we couldn't do something, we did it anyway. Sarah turned to address the full Council. Humanity has a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The hierarchy is evil. They want to enslave the galaxy. Are we going to let them do it just because they say they're powerful? But we don't have the military strength to stop them, Ambassador Thresk said. The Kalaran representative looked torn between fear and hope. Then we'll build it, Sarah said firmly. We have 30 days. That's time to prepare. Time to evacuate civilians to safe locations. Time to set traps and organize defenses. Time to show the hierarchy that this galaxy belongs to us, not to them. Velshara spoke then. Representative Chen, are you proposing that humanity lead a military resistance against the hierarchy? I'm proposing we all fight together, Sarah said. The Council was formed by species working together to defeat the hierarchy once. We can do it again, but we have to choose to fight. Surrender is not an option. And if we fight and lose, Kriath challenged, if we anger them and they destroy us all? Sarah smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Then we die fighting. And maybe, just maybe, we hurt them badly enough that they think twice before threatening anyone else ever again. The debate continued for hours. Some species supported Sarah's proposal. Others argued for surrender. The Council was more divided than it had been in thousands of years. Finally, Velshara called for a vote. The question was simple. Would the Council resist the hierarchy or attempt to negotiate surrender? The vote took 30 minutes as each species considered their choice. When the results were announced, Sarah felt her heart sink. The vote was 120 in favor of surrender, 80 in favor of resistance. The majority wanted to give up, but then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Thresk stood up. Kalara Prime withdraws from the vote, she announced. Our people owe our lives to humanity. We will fight alongside them regardless of what the Council decides. Ambassador Lauren of the Mindari rose next. The Mindari stand with humanity. We vote to resist. One by one, 40 species changed their votes or withdrew from the decision to surrender. These were mostly younger Council members, species that had been helped by humanity over the past 3 years. They remembered human courage at Kalara Prime. They had trained with human military advisors. They had learned that hope was more powerful than fear. The final vote was 80 in favor of surrender, 120 in favor of resistance. The Council would fight. Kriath and the species that wanted to surrender were furious, but they were bound by Council law. The majority had spoken. The galaxy would prepare for war. Sarah spent the next 30 days coordinating the defense effort. It was the most difficult thing she had ever done. Convincing scared civilizations to fight was harder than any battle. But slowly, the Council military began to mobilize. Human advisors spread throughout Council space, teaching other species the tactics humanity had developed. Guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, combined arms tactics, creative use of resources. Most importantly, they taught courage. The hierarchy expects you to be afraid, human instructors told alien soldiers. They expect you to run. When you stand and fight instead, you take away their greatest weapon. The Kalarans proved to be natural students. Their gentle nature hid surprising determination when protecting their families. The Kavarn already knew how to fight, but humans taught them flexibility and improvisation. The Mindari learned to use their small size and speed as advantages. 40 species trained together, learning each other's strengths and covering each other's weaknesses. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was building a truly unified military force. Meanwhile, humanity contributed everything they could. Earth's factories worked around the clock building weapons and ships. Human engineers helped design new defensive systems. Human strategists planned the defense of critical worlds. On day 28, Sarah received a private communication from Velshara. The High Arbiter wanted to meet in person. They met in a secure room away from the Council chamber. Velshara looked tired, as if the weight of the galaxy rested on her shoulders. I want to thank you, Commander Chen, Velshara said. You gave the Council something we had lost, hope. The belief that we could face our fears instead of running from them. We all have to stand together, Sarah replied. That's the only way this works. I need to tell you something, Velshara said quietly. There is an ancient prophecy among the founding species of the Council. It speaks of a species born in fire who would reignite the galaxy's will to survive. When I first learned about humanity, I wondered if you might be the species the prophecy described. Sarah felt uncomfortable with that idea. We're not special. We're just people trying to survive. That is exactly what makes you special, Velshara said. You do not see yourselves as superior, yet you inspire others to be better. You have suffered greatly, yet you remain hopeful. You face impossible odds, yet you refuse to give up. That is the power the prophecy spoke of. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The hierarchy had arrived 2 days early. Sarah and Velshara rushed to the command center. The display showed a fleet of hundreds of ships emerging from jump space near the Council's core worlds. The hierarchy vessels were massive and ancient, built from technology the Council barely understood. A communication came through. The same cold voice from the original message spoke. Your 30 days have expired. We detect military preparations. This is foolish. Submit now and your suffering will be minimized. Sarah looked at Velshara, who nodded. Sarah opened the communication channel, making sure her face was visible to the hierarchy and broadcast to every ship in the Council fleet. This is Commander Sarah Chen, representing the Galactic Council, she said clearly. We have considered your demand for surrender. Our answer is no. Silence followed. The hierarchy had clearly expected immediate submission. When the voice spoke again, it sounded different, uncertain. You choose extinction. Your species barely survived our last war. You cannot have forgotten the price of resistance. We remember, Sarah said. We remember that our ancestors fought you and won. We remember that bullies only have power if we give it to them, and we remember that some things are worth dying for. Our freedom is one of those things. She took a breath and continued, her voice growing stronger. You wanted to know if we're still the species that defeated you? Here's your answer. We're stronger now. We've learned to work together better. We've been taught courage by a species that knows what it means to never give up, and we're done being afraid of you. You speak bravely for someone about to die, the hierarchy voice said, but Sarah could hear something new in it. Doubt. Maybe we'll die, Sarah agreed, but we'll take as many of you with us as we can. And the ones who survive will keep fighting. We'll never stop. We'll never surrender. We'll make you regret the day you decided to come back to our galaxy. She leaned closer to the camera. You wanted to reclaim what's yours? This galaxy isn't yours. It belongs to everyone who calls it home. Everyone who's willing to defend it. And we're telling you right now, you're not welcome here. Sarah cut the transmission. Around her, the command center erupted in cheers. Species that had been ready to surrender 30 days ago were now shouting defiance at their ancient enemy. The hierarchy fleet began moving forward, weapons powering up. The battle was about to begin. All ships assumed defensive positions, Sarah ordered. She had been given temporary command of the Council Defense Forces, something that would have been unthinkable a few years ago. But humanity had earned the trust of enough species to make it possible. The Council fleet moved into position. It was smaller than the hierarchy fleet, but it was organized and determined. Human ships formed the front line, with Kavarn warships on the flanks. Kalaran support vessels stayed back, ready to provide repairs and medical assistance. Mendari scouts spread out to gather intelligence and strike at weak points. The hierarchy attacked with overwhelming force, expecting the Council fleet to break and scatter. Instead, they found organized resistance. The Council ships worked together with practiced coordination, covering each other and concentrating fire on priority targets. Human tactics proved effective. Instead of meeting the hierarchy in traditional ship-to-ship combat, the Council fleet used hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, and feints. They made the hierarchy fleet chase them through asteroid fields and sensor dead zones. They used the environment as a weapon. The hierarchy had superior technology, but they were fighting the last war. They expected the same tactics from 100,000 years ago. They were unprepared for the flexible, creative warfare humanity had taught the Council. After 6 hours of fighting, something remarkable happened. The hierarchy fleet began to retreat. They had lost 50 ships and gained nothing. The Council fleet had taken losses too, but they had held their ground. The galaxy watched in amazement as the ancient terror of the hierarchy pulled back from a force they should have easily crushed. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The hierarchy would analyze what went wrong. They would adapt. They would come back stronger. Over the next 6 months, the pattern repeated. The hierarchy would attack. The council would defend. Both sides took losses, but neither could gain a decisive advantage. The war settled into a grinding stalemate, but something important was changing. With each battle, the council species grew more confident. They stopped being afraid of the hierarchy. They started believing they could win. Human academies were established on dozens of worlds, teaching council species not just combat tactics, but something more fundamental. They taught courage. They taught hope. They taught the idea that individuals could make a difference. Young aliens from peaceful species learned to be warriors, but they also learned to be protectors. Human instructors emphasized that strength should be used to defend, not to conquer. Power should protect the weak, not exploit them. We're not trying to create soldiers, one human instructor explained to a class of mixed species. We're trying to help you become the best version of yourselves. Brave enough to face danger, compassionate enough to help those in need, strong enough to stand up for what's right. This philosophy spread throughout council space. Species that had been rivals for thousands of years began working together. The common thread of the hierarchy gave them purpose. Human example gave them courage. War leader Thrak visited Earth during this time. He stood with Marcus Webb, now a general overseeing human military training programs, looking at a memorial for the fallen. Your species has changed the galaxy, Thrak said quietly, not through conquest or superior technology, through inspiration. You have reminded us what we should be. Marcus nodded. We're not special. We just learned some hard lessons about survival. Now we're sharing those lessons. No, Thrak disagreed. You are special. Not because you are stronger or smarter, but because you choose hope when others choose despair. You choose courage when others choose fear. You choose to help when others turn away. That is power greater than any weapon. 8 months into the war, the decisive moment came. The hierarchy launched their largest assault yet, throwing everything they had at the council's most important military station. They expected to break the council's will by capturing this strategic location. Instead, they found 100 council species standing united. Every ship, every soldier, every civilian who could hold a weapon came to defend the station. The battle lasted 3 days. It was brutal and costly, but the council held. On the 3rd day, as the hierarchy fleet prepared for one final push, something unexpected happened. Their fleet commanders requested a ceasefire to negotiate. Sarah met with the hierarchy representatives via secure channel. They appeared on the screen as tall, elegant beings with crystalline features. They looked tired and old. We propose a truce, the hierarchy representative said. We will withdraw from council space. In exchange, you will not pursue us into the outer regions. Why should we agree to that? Sarah asked. You came here to enslave us. You killed millions. Why should we let you leave? Because continued war benefits neither of us, the hierarchy representative said. We underestimated you. We expected the same species we conquered before. Weak, divided, afraid. Instead, we found something we did not anticipate. The representative paused. We found unity, courage, and something else. You call it hope. We do not fully understand this concept, but we recognize its power. You believe you can win, and that belief makes it true. Sarah leaned forward. What guarantee do we have that you won't come back in another 100,000 years? None, the representative admitted. But know this. The hierarchy is not what it once was. We are few in number. Our civilization is dying. We came here seeking resources to save ourselves. Instead, we found an enemy we cannot defeat. Not because of your weapons, but because of your spirit. The representative's expression changed, showing something that might have been respect. You have taught us something we forgot long ago. That power without purpose is hollow. That fear is a temporary weapon. That hope is eternal. Go back to your people, Sarah said. Tell them that this galaxy is protected. Tell them that if they want resources or territory, they need to ask, not demand. Tell them that the age of the hierarchy is over. This is the age of the council. And we don't conquer. We cooperate. The hierarchy fleet jumped away 3 days later. They left behind the wreckage of hundreds of ships and the memory of a war they could not win. The galaxy celebrated. Species that had been enemies became friends. The council, which had been a loose alliance for 50,000 years, became a true union. And at the center of it all was humanity, the young species that had reminded everyone what they could be. 5 years after the hierarchy's departure, Sarah stood in the council chamber during a ceremony honoring the war's heroes. Representatives from every council species were present. High Arbiter Velshara spoke to the assembled delegates. Today we honor not just those who fought, but all who believed we could win. We honor the courage that refused to surrender, the hope that sustained us through dark times, the unity that made us strong. She looked directly at Sarah. And we honor humanity, the species that changed everything, not through conquest but through example, not through fear but through inspiration. They showed us that true power is not the ability to destroy but the ability to inspire others to be brave. Velshara addressed the full council. The hierarchy returned, expecting to find the same galaxy they left. Weak species waiting to be dominated. Instead, they found something they could not comprehend. They found hope. They found courage. They found unity. And most importantly, they found that we had learned from humanity what it means to never give up. She paused, then said the words that would echo through history. This was the moment the galaxy learned that humanity was the greatest power, not because they had the strongest weapons or the largest fleet, but because they gave us something more valuable. They gave us the courage to stand up for ourselves. They gave us hope that we could change. They gave us the belief that together we could face anything. The chamber erupted in applause. Every species present stood in respect for humanity and for each other. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She thought about Commander Chen on the Perseverance, refusing to surrender to the Zarians. She thought about Marcus Webb and the defenders of New Terra. She thought about Admiral Rodriguez and the 20,000 who died at Kalara Prime. She thought about all the humans who had sacrificed, fought and struggled to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. They had wanted only to survive. Instead, they had changed the galaxy forever. After the ceremony, Sarah walked through the observation deck of Nexus Prime Station, looking out at the stars. Ambassador Thresk joined her, along with War Leader Thrak and several other friends from various species. What happens now? Thresk asked. The hierarchy is gone. The war is over. What does humanity do next? Sarah smiled. The same thing we've always done. We explore, we build, we help those who need it. We stand up to bullies. We hope for the best and prepare for the worst. We try to make tomorrow better than today. And if another threat emerges, Thrak asked, then we'll face it together. Sarah said simply, that's what the council is now. Not a hierarchy of strong over weak, but a family of species who protect each other. Humanity didn't teach you to be like us. We taught you to be the best versions of yourselves. She looked at her friends, these aliens who had become like family. The greatest power isn't military might or advanced technology. It's the power to inspire others, to make them believe they can be more than they were, to give them hope when everything seems hopeless. That's what humanity brought to the galaxy, and that's what will keep us all safe in the future. They stood together watching the stars, knowing that whatever challenges came next, they would face them united. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest power was not their ability to fight, but their ability to teach others to be brave, and that power would echo through the stars for generations to come. The moment aliens learned humanity was the greatest power in the galaxy was not during a battle or through demonstrations of force. It was the moment they realized that humans could make others powerful too, that humanity's true strength was in lifting others up, not in pushing them down, that courage, hope, and unity were weapons more powerful than any technology. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly how it should be.